Welcome back everyone, my name is Sandu and I'll be taking a closer look at this smallest DAC/headphone amp/Bluetooth receiver that I tried thus far. The most interesting aspect about this one is that a double triode is sitting inside, which should add a tube flavor not only via its headphone jack but also via its RCA outputs. And of course it has plenty of power even for a few desktop planar headphones, which is quite interesting. But it has a few issues which weren't that interesting, so let's dive in the usual way. Build quality wise, we're talking about a fully metallic case. It has a metallic volume wheel, which I really like. It has an acrylic piece right here, which will pass the light coming from its monochrome OLED screen. And for a $290 unit, I believe that the build quality is really nice with this one. The only thing I dislike is that after about an hour of use, plenty of heat will be coming from the unit, especially from its vacuum tube. In their stead, I would use a taller rubber feet because right now there is less than 1 centimeter from its vacuum tube and your table. And if you use a white painted table, it might leave a mark after a few weeks of use. So keep that in mind. As for controls, this thing is very easy to operate even without that metallic remote control. A single press on its volume wheel will change the digital input from USB to coaxial and then to Bluetooth, and a double press will change its working mode from tube to op-amp. A long press lets you choose the digital filter, and there are 7 digital filters available, which are slightly altering the way the upper treble is being rolled off. On its back you have 3 digital inputs that I just mentioned, a 12-volt DC input and a pair of RCA outputs. If you need it as a pure DAC, then maxed out the volume, and if you need it as a DAC and preamp, then start playing with its volume wheel. As for tech inside it, I was unable to remove those T8 screws which are located somewhere around here. I'm not sure if they use some glue, but with my iFixit screwdriver toolkit, I was unable to remove them. So I'll be relying on a few pictures which I found online. First of all, it uses an ES9038 Q2M mobile DAC chip, which is actually the flagship low voltage DAC chip of ESS Technologies. That is already a very good start. Followed by a double triode, current production double triode, which should add some tube flavor into the mix. Then a headphone amplifier is following, which consists of several Texas Instruments op-amps and analog buffers. The interesting part is that those op-amps are working as its headphone amplifier, but also as its analog output stage for its DAC section, so those have double duties. The interesting and probably the coolest part about this one is that there are plenty of discrete components as diodes and resistors, which I'm pretty sure will leave a positive mark, will add some organic matter, some naturalness into the mix. There are 3 Nexem relays, which will offer a slow start, a slow turn off, and that is great, especially for a tube headphone amplifier, so it will never damage your headphones no matter what. While it's being powered by an external switching mode power supply, which is not looking that impressive, you should know that most of its power supply is actually sitting inside the unit. So there are several low noise voltage regulators, plenty of VMA REDs, plenty of Panasonic apps for a clearer and for a stable power delivery for the crucial digital and analog circuits. The component selection is honestly very good, especially at this price point. And I always appreciated that about Aune Audio, putting plenty of discrete components, which I'm pretty sure that will leave a positive mark once music will start playing. Alright guys, this is pretty much it, so let's hit some eardrums. I don't use powered speakers in my office, so most of my listening was made via its headphone jack, but still for fun I tried this one in my stereo setup. So I connected it to a quad power amplifier and to those KEF reference free loudspeakers. First and foremost, I started playing with those digital filters, and after a few minutes it was clear to me that those doing little to nothing really, because you are basically playing with the roll-off that is happening past 20 kilohertz, so past our hearing abilities, and I would be surprised if you would hear a difference whatsoever. The second part, what intrigued me, was when I was swapping from tube mode to op-amp mode, because again, there isn't such a massive difference. There is a difference, but not a huge one, mostly because you are basically always using that vacuum tube no matter what. You are choosing to bypass some op-amps, but no matter what working mode you are choosing, that tube is always working via headphones, via loudspeakers, via its RCA output and its headphone jack. Personally, I like its tube mode a little bit more because it adds some lushness, some richness to the sound. It makes it more organic, it makes it fuller bodied at the cost of some smearing happening on the micro level. So it will definitely impress newcomers to this hobby that want a more musical representation, and it will not impress veteran audiophiles which want a better transparency, a better detail retrieval. So this one is a very musical sounding unit, it's a very warm sounding unit, it's not neutral, it's not linear sounding, and more like a fun sounding little gizmo in a way. Going back to its op-amp mode, you feel that the sound is tighter, you feel that there is a better control over headphone drivers, you feel that there is slightly more details, so the smearing is somehow disappearing. You feel that the noise floor goes down, so there is less noise with ultra-sensitive IEMs and with portable headphones. To my surprise, its tonality remains unchanged, its frequency response remains unchanged, so its bass, mid-range and treble have the same, the same amount of energy. And that is a great thing because its treble is always very smooth, easygoing, so it's not aggressive sounding, it's not bright sounding in the treble, so you can listen even to some bright sounding tunes while gently slashing all that glare and listening fatigue. Moving on to power output, it provides 300 milliwatts into 32 ohms and 45 milliwatts into 300 ohms. And although on paper it doesn't look like a lot of power and headroom, it was able to drive a few planar headphones. So I tried Meze Elite, LZH Charybdis and Phobos and Keneton Rognir, and with all of them I was arriving maybe at around 88 or 90 out of 100. And although I was arriving at its upper power limits, it was never clipping, that bass was always very controlled and clean sounding. It was not breaking those dynamics and it was driving them pretty nicely actually. You can do better than this, but not at this price point, so you need to shell a lot more money for that to happen. With high sensitivity headphones like Sennheiser HD800S, I was arriving at around 92, maybe 95 maximum, so very close to upper power limits, but again it was refusing to break those dynamics. It was always thumpy, impactful, it was quite bassy actually with HD800S, and it was not clipping at all, something that might happen with solid-state headphone amplifiers when arriving at upper power limits, so that was quite interesting to hear. Honestly, I don't believe I've heard those HD800S so alive and so pleasing at that price point, and if you own any of their mid-range cans like HD650 or 660, then Flamingo is a very easy recommendation to make. Aune is mentioning a noise floor of 4 microvolts in op-amp mode and 20 microvolts in tube mode. But in reality, I was unable to hear a big difference between the two because when I was inserting and taking out a pair of ultra-sensitive IEMs, there was still a blanket of white noises all over my music, but it was slightly stronger via its tube mode. When music started playing, I was unable to hear that white noise anymore, so it worked okay with IEMs. For purists, just use that op-amp mode, and if you don't care for that much and you are here for musical nirvana, then use its tube mode. For fun, I also tried a linear power supply, which was a FiO PL50, and to my surprise, it added just a little bit better dynamics, but the noise floor didn't go lower. meaning that its internal power supply is already good enough at suppressing all that AC noise that is coming from your mains. So I wouldn't get a linear power supply for a unit like this because I do believe its stock one already works good enough with IEMs, and it didn't get any benefits for super easy loads as IEMs. The nicest thing to discuss about this little fellow right here are dynamics and transients. While it's limited in power and headroom and it is unable to drive big planars like Odyssey LCD4, like DCA Stealth, like Hi-Fi Vara, it was able to drive plenty of headphones, no problem. But the biggest surprise was definitely its dynamics and transient response. While it's not as fast sounding like THX amplifiers, like NFC amplifiers, it was definitely punchier sounding in the bass compared to those amplifiers. HD800S by Sennheisers aren't really known to be amazing sounding with rock or electronica tunes, but via Flamingo I was headbanging in no time, I was toy tapping in no time, and I was really enjoying my time with rock tunes via HD800S, which rarely happens with solid-state electronics. It's not that fast sounding, that is for sure, but it punches way above its weight class in terms of dynamics and bass slam. While it's not that powerful and you cannot drive all and everything, at close to max power it's not losing control over headphone drivers, and the bass grip isn't lowering at all. The only things I can complain about in a unit like this are the power output and detail retrieval, which is okay, but not really outstanding. As I was telling before, it will impress a lot more a music lover or maybe a newcomer, which cares a lot more for the act of music listening, but not so much veteran audiophiles which want to hear everything that is happening behind their tracks. That is not really happening with this one. A good deal of information still comes forward on the macro scale, but on the micro scale not so much. Plenty of nuances are still lingering in the shadows and you cannot hear those. On one hand, mediocre or just plain bad mastered music will sound great on this one. On the other hand, reference recordings will not offer you the last drop of information, as it usually happens with upper class headphone amplifiers, DACs and equipment. So that is not really the case with this one. A few things will still hide in the shadows no matter what, but considering that we are dealing with an entry-level device, I was kind of expecting this kind of performance. This one is not muddy sounding, this one is not failed sounding, and it's not transparent either, and that's the biggest downside of the little Flamingo. Moving on to frequency response, I will just mention that it's mid-range and its bass are the biggest standouts, but especially its mid-range department. Its bass is strong, it's bold, it reaches those lowest octaves, but it's not a very high quality type of bass. You can improve that quality by engaging op-amp mode, which makes it slightly faster, slightly clearer, at the cost of a shorter decay in the bass, of a less holographic type of sound. The part that I liked the most was, of course, its mid-range, which felt juicy, full-bodied, warm, so it's not linear or neutral at all, it's elevated, and you can feel that especially with acoustic music, with voices, everything that has to do with musical instruments. And I'm pretty sure that those discrete components and that vacuum tube added so much life and energy in the mid-range, and that's all I can say about its mid-range. It's just outstanding. There is no sharpness whatsoever, there is no S's, no with the voices, all that is not happening at all. It's a very easy to listen to device. Its treble output has nothing to do with that ESS Sabre silicone, and regardless of what digital filter I was using, I felt that there is a gentle roll-off happening in the upper treble, and that was happening with any musical genre, not only with rock or aggressive music. So it was not super extended and not super clean sounding in the upper treble, but it was lacking any kind of sharpness, any kind of digitus. So you can listen basically to anything, that wouldn't be really a problem. It's not going for a neutral frequency response, but for a full-bodied and organic presentation, which will impress a music lover. All right, everybody, let's draw some conclusions. I wasn't too thrilled about the heat generated by the unit. I didn't like its short rubber feet. In their stead, I would use taller rubber feet, which will help with heat dissipation. And also don't like that you cannot change its stock tube, so it's here forever. While it's not that impressive in terms of detail, retrieval and transparency, it's nothing to write home about. If you care for the act of music listening, for butterflies in your stomach, for headbanging or smiling while listening to music, then I don't know a better unit at this price that does those things better. Actually, all Aune devices are sounding more or less the same, so they have a very consistent tonality, and that's something that I will cherish and I respect about Aune audio. And if everything I said resonated with you, then it's a very easy recommendation to make, especially for newcomers of this wonderful hobby. Thanks for watching, everyone. Please let me know in the comment section below your feelings about the little Flamingo, especially in terms of size and price. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one, and until that happens, here are 3 more videos which you might like.